Okay, we are live again. A little worn out this week. Had a lot of things going on. A lot of crazy stuff happening. The week before was tied up with jury duty, and this one here kind of flew by. Trip to the dentist and a whole bunch of other fun crap. Just cost me more money, but yep, made it through. See what we got going on this week with everyone when they show up. But like I've been saying, with the economy the way it is, and that a lot of the aggressive sales on stuff. Good morning. Uh, Tired, a little worn out. But a lot of the aggressive sales are gone. But AR-15s, especially if you build them, I got a new venue. People have been pestering me and asking me to check out their guns. They know I have a channel, and they let me test some of their stuff out uh, on there. That's where all the Bear Creek Arsenal stuff started coming. I've done business with them before in the past, uh, and yeah, I mean, some of the stuff is great. One guy put it, and this is quite a few years ago. He goes, when I get barrels from them, he goes, some of them are fantastic, and he goes, just some of them are not. Okay, so he goes, it's hit or miss. I bought a lot of their components as products, and the only full size guns or the complete firearms I got that Grizzly pistol, which basically a generic Glock. I mean, the gun worked good and everything else. Um, you know, things were great, but the rifles weren't bad. One of them was extremely good, and one of them was not. Okay, and that great put it to that it functioned, but I had my thoughts about the barrel. There will be a video where I run a bore scope down the barrel of those two test platforms. Those are given to me by friends to check out, and they're not in my possession anymore, so you won't see them on the channel no more. But we're going to do some more work. I got a side charger because I never had one. I wanted to test out. We're going to test out some other stuff. All right, H&R PSA for all the retro rifles that you purchased. All right, first off, when I was in the service, the only rifle we had was the M14 still. The M14 was standard issue on a naval ship until the late 1980s. As compared to the only guns I handled in the service was when I was with a friend of mine down at Fort Bragg that was an armorer. And that was, we're talking 40 years. Okay. Um, the A2s were new. I handled one of them with a 203 grenade launch. That thing I was more interested in than not because we had on the ship, we had M79s, which is basically a single shotgun. But yeah, I fit and finish. I can't tell. I didn't really study them. I just picked the gun up, looked at it, fooled around with it, put it back in the rack. But the lockup and that's good between them. Okay, even the ones that I built, they don't have that weird play like you're talking about. Not they don't really have, and if they do, it's slight. Okay, uh, and then the real ones, I never checked it for that. It's been years, and you don't see original. Unless I was in the army, I've never really handled an original A1 or A2. Because I think A2s were new that time I was down there. I picked one up. That was it. Okay. But they're quality guns. They're well-made guns. They're kind of worth it. You know. Even the ones I assembled from the upper and lower lock up pretty good. I don't know if I still have that one out here. See, I can't show the friggin' guns on screen, but let me look at the pistol with a PSA lower. The pistol bill with the PSA lower is little bit of play, but nothing serious. Don't rattle like a bastard. Morning, Joe. But the machining was rough. Rebuilding the bolt carrier. What do you mean by rebuilding? Replacing it? Because I don't know how you would rebuild something that's machined out of solid steel. And then the coating on there, you can't file or do anything unless you mean changing the bolt out of there. Well, you have to understand H&R does not exist. Okay, or the company you're thinking of is Harrington and Richardson. Okay, that company kind of fizzled out. It made shotguns, and over years it made a bunch of different pistols and that. Okay, but at a certain point, the company was absorbed by that conglomerate. Okay, Remington Arms, and whatever was left of that company, the original company, or what it came down to in early 2000s or 90s or whenever it was where it was bought. Remington actually bought, and they were only making the lever action. What was that? They were making the shotguns. I forget which one it was. Who the hell made the lever actions? I think Harrington and Richardson, they just bought it. They were only making the shotgun line. That was indoors. One of them they bought Marlin. When they bought Marlin or something, they brought the machinery down, and they didn't even bring it into the old plant up there. They built a single-story steel building in the parking lot in the front. I don't know where the hell the employees park, but they built a building in there and put all the machinery and that in there. And that's what Ruger went up and bought that stuff out of that building that was built in the old parking lot. And then I guess they tore it down because when you go by now or they show a picture of it, that thing ain't there. So yeah, it was bought up by the conglomerate. And then when they sold it, who bought this was Nodak Spud. There were two guys that run Nodak Spud or something, and he was making the retro AR lower receivers for quite a few years. Matter of fact, that's what kind of kicked off this, is he was having the actual forgings made and reproducing them. But then somehow he's split off from that company, Nodak Spud. They also made some really great AK-47 receivers that were ready to just assemble. I mean, they were, you had to get an FFL to get anything from them, but they were pretty good. And actually, if he had them back, when the kits were popular, I would have used those instead of rolling my own like I did and go through that process. But somehow he broke away from that company. And what he did is he purchased the name of Harrington and Richardson. The name, and I guess they used, that was the logo they had that they put on the lowers that they manufactured for the government. So that is not, even though it says Harrington and Richardson's, it is not the company you're thinking of anymore. It's just a trademark, like Coca-Cola or something like that. It's a trademark. They bought the trademark, and those are Nodak Spud built firearms. And actually, it's pretty interesting what they're doing with PSA on that. Okay, yeah, I've kind of noticed that. The extractor springs and shit are pretty tough on there, and the ejector pins. And that is a failing point. So you're talking just the bull face extractor. Yeah, you're talking a simple rebuild, and that's not too terrible. If you got the parts in that, it might be a thing to do. Yeah, that's a simple rebuild because a lot of them. I had one. I have parts laying around. I had one that I had to rebuild for something or other, some discount brand thing, and I think the bolt head's still in a parts box I got. But that's not too difficult of a rebuild. And like you said, CMMG would probably work. Probably, like you said, save you a lot of friggin' troubles. Yeah, Marlin. I think Ruger ended up with Marlin, and they bought all the machinery because when they started, that happened in the '90s. That company started buying up all these different gun companies. I think the first was Bushmaster, and then all of them, H&R, Marlin. They bought all them companies, and that was kind of a crap deal. They ended up separating the thing in Remington there, and Remington got caught holding the bag. Remington went and built a whole new factory somewhere down in Louisiana or something, brand new modern factory, and that all went to hell. And I don't know, that company existed there since 1812 up there in New York, and continuously through the history, their company has almost went bankrupt numerous times. I have no idea why. Almost in the Civil War, then the rolling block saved it. Then World War One, it almost went bankrupt when the damn Russians canceled their orders for Nagant rifles. Then World War Two, was another shot in the arm. They made a bunch of stuff. Things went good. Then they almost went bankrupt in the 50s. And then the 870 and 1100 saved their ass, and they sold millions of them. But they were then, how was it? Was I out of the service? Yeah, it was in the late 80s or something. They lost their contracts. The 870 pump shotgun was used by every police department in the military. Okay. And when we got our loadout, my ship was brand new in the mid 80s. It was Mossberg 500s with wooden stocks is what we had, riot guns. So Remington lost its contracts with the government, almost went bankrupt again. So interesting history, but it is no more. They got the logo and that. People have asked me, but I don't know what the hell they're doing with the factory up there. Yeah, and the clone ones are not. They're a pain in the ass to load, and for some reason with the lips or something, that's where you got to tap that sucker. Okay, the ones Colt made that weren't the waffle mags, you never did that, but those you got to tap them to get the bullets to seat all the way back, or they don't work well. And one guy that was over there back early told me you never put more than 19 rounds in, and the bottom two were tracers. Of course, he was SOF, he was Special Forces or whatever operator. And, like I guess that's all they had was 20 round magazines, and he'd stack them up. And he said he put two tracers in. So when he was shooting, when he'd see a tracer, he'd just dump the mag, throw another one in, and be ready. That's the only true Vietnam story I heard about the M16 or whatever they were called back then, and the magazines. Okay. Morning. Yeah, Remington made a lot of nice guns over the years, and they were all well made and reliable. But towards the end, it's like all the chokes, all your Rem chokes weren't made at Remington. They were made in a small shop in West Winfield. And before I moved down here, I went and applied for a job there. I was looking for a job with that guy. And he had one area of this building was just with all these lathes with 8 cylinders and bar feeders. And these machines just ran every single gauge and that of choke 24 hours a day. All of them chokes were made at this other company. And this guy, he was strange, man. He'd buy a brand new machine and run it for 8 years, and then he'd sell it used and then buy another one to replace it, so he didn't have to have a maintenance department or something like that, or things wouldn't wear out on him. He just kept running. And a lot of the small bits and pieces of your, well, they were 1100s. I don't know what the heck they called the later model, the ones that are Parkerized. They didn't blue them, they Parkerized them, plastic or pressed wood. And half of the internal components were farmed out to these little rinky-dink machine shops, because somebody bought some antique CNC machine and they had a contract to make one part for Remington on this machine, and they were going to hire me to come over, do a program and set the thing up and get it running. And I turned them down because I had a decent job and I was the foreman or supervisor on the second shift where I worked. I said I was flattered, and I didn't even know somebody else went down there with some off the wall machine. He's older controller and programming, which some of these old machines you get into that a modern machine, if you type in the code in a sentence, it'll read it. Some of these things don't, and you just have to break it into separate things, so it's a pain in the ass. But see, then quality control. Then I was at the VA, sitting there with a guy that got out of NAM and worked at the arms for, 20, 30 years. He was in the QA department. He said there used to be 60 of us in a room. He goes, now there's 4 of us left in like a storage closet. And he goes, they're asking me to do a quality check on a part and they don't have a blueprint for it. So that's goes to show you how they cut costs, and manufacturing this country went to hell in a handbasket. Because there was a time, if you got a gun from Remington, this one old guy told me back in the early 70s, he bought an 1100 and he was shooting it. I think it was trap shooting. He was firing the gun and it wouldn't pattern right. He said the pattern's off. Okay. So he wrote a letter to the arms, and the arms said, send the gun back to us. He sent the gun back, and he said a couple months later, he sent him the gun back, said, shoot it now. And he went on to go to the national competitions and win a category there with that shotgun. That's the way that company was back in the old days. Okay. Not anymore. From what I see on YouTube, when you send guns back to these people, they tell you there ain't nothing wrong with it. Too bad. Well, you don't know if they got earplugs in. Everyone thinks I fire the guns without hearing protection. I got earplugs, but maybe they did. You know, they didn't wear hearing protection in the old days. I used to shoot skeet and trap without it for years. That's one of the things when you go for a hearing test, they ask you in your hobbies, have you shot a lot of skeet and trap? Because people didn't uh, wear hearing protection back in the day, but that's the way it was back then. Yeah, but the arms is gone, and I think somebody's still producing these guns and selling them. Where or who or if that factory is still operational down south and still has the Remington name, I don't know. Because somebody from back home asked me that when I was on the phone with them. They said, do they make them anywhere anymore? And I looked them up, and I guess Remington guns are still available, are still new. But yeah, it's sad. Sad state of affairs. Unlike Winchester, the liberals went nuts in Connecticut and since the found, they've been making guns there forever and told them to get out. Winchester was another fine company. How's it going? I don't know. Like I said, another wild week. Maybe I'm going to buy a summer home in Iceland. I don't know, or some property up there. Way things are going. What I don't know how you measure it. Some of them rattle. I had some of them loose in the house, stick an AccuEdge in there, or you know, that's something you got to kind of decide. Advise you on that. I don't know. Like I said, the friggin' Anderson that I bought, it's so tight. You got to tap that rear thing out with a brass punch. Okay, and that's tighter than hell. Something ain't quite. Something's off a thousandths or so somewhere in there. But which time, they work. I've had them where they rattle like crazy and they work and they shoot well. You know, why have you picked one up? See, you're asking me this. Have you picked one up and have you felt the play in them or whatever? I can't really tell you because I can't handle the guns on here. I don't know where my build for the, or is that upstairs? That's still upstairs. That's in the other studio. But yeah, the little pistol I built, which is a PSA lower and the upper, it's got a little bit of twitch to it, but nothing horrible. I haven't shot that yet with this Arctic weather we've had where it's a couple of days here, it didn't get up to 36 degrees at noon. So I haven't been able to go out and test any of this crap and see. And sending back a gun for play, that's a tough call. It's one thing if the thing don't feed or don't whatever, but kind of don't know what you're looking for with that. Morning, Peter. Yep, but Bear Creek, that's an interesting company. But a lot of interest in it. I found more than any of the other things. There's a lot of interest in the retro guns. That's driving up views and helping with the algorithms. But the Bear Creek's another one where, like I said, I've had some stuff to come out of there that's not good. Okay, needed some work. But let me see. Yeah, they got to have some play in them. There is something. And like I said, it's been 40 years since I handled a GI issue gun. It was at an Army base, which I was in the Navy with a friend of mine. I got to look at some of their guns, but that wasn't the. I just thought the M203 grenade launcher was cool. You had your rifle and you just slid that thing up, shoved the grenade in there. But the 79s, they had some gunners mates, man. They put one of them right on top of your head. Okay. M79 was something to think of too. Well, lucky you. I'd take 90 over something. And they said next week it's going to get down 10 degrees here. It's actually, there's a cold front coming. It's going to go and drop the temperature in Florida down into the 20s, which that ain't good. See, here, the roads ain't designed for any snow or ice. And if it rains and you get ice, I mean, the way the roads are, doesn't matter what you got. You're going to slide the way they're angled right off the damn things here. And in Florida, it's a disaster for the fruit and everything down there when the temperature gets that low. So we'll see. But 90, yeah, even in Los Angeles, it used to be hot there because at Death Valley in Long Beach and that, it used to be hotter than hell. But even then, in the wintertime, you get down to 57 or something. And I'd see people wearing parkas. So, I don't know. I don't know. It used to be when you get mismatched bolts, I very rarely, if ever, found one that had a problem. But then with Enfields, I guess they changed the head of the bolt to adjust head space. But generally, your Mausers, Carcanos, you don't know. Some of them ain't serial numbered. Yeah, that I never ran into because the only Enfields I got were back in the heyday. They were all matching, back in the 80s. Nowadays, you can't tell because people just park the gun. Mill surplus is so expensive. People build stuff from drill rifles and broken down pieces of junk or parts pulled off of guns. Usually, when parts get pulled off of a gun, there's something wrong with them, or something happened to the gun, that was disassembled and sold for parts. So yeah, I don't know. Best thing to do, buy a set of headspace gauges. I mean, they're expensive, but you check your ass out that way. I mean, a lot of people. I knew one guy, because on an Enfield and Mosin, it's going to be like a washer because they had space off the rim. It's just going to be a precision washer. There was one guy I knew used to go to gun show. He had a field gauge. That's all he bought. And if it didn't close on the field gauge, he'd buy the guns. That's how we checked them. You should have all three, which is going to be over $100, but you'll 100% know if your gun is good. Or if it isn't and you have to go get another bolt head, you got a way of measuring it and figuring out what you need to repair it. And using shims of paper is not a good idea. Yeah, faintly scrubbed markings. Yeah, a shop or a gun show, they're always going to charge you. I think 3.5 is what they uh, go for around, you know. But unless you want to go and go to auctions or something and try to, put the time in to get one for lower, you might be able to get one lower. But then again, at the auction, it's not sight unseen. But yeah, because what do they go for? They go for about 3.25, most of it. Not really high anymore. Yeah, well, you're further north than me now. Ha ha ha. But I don't know what it is today. Let me check. I didn't even go outside yet. Providence. Well, they're saying 55.4 right at the moment. So yeah, see, I never had a full one or checked the headspace on one. The assortment of them that I accumulated all were matching, and I fired them. I never had no problems, and then all I got is a number 4. You know, another thing, I used to have about 6 examples of it. Yeah, they were about 100.5 back in the 80s, $200 around them because they for some reason the Yugos had a ton of them things, and I guess they're still showing up to this day, one way or the other. To get a stock. Yeah, that's a tough thing. I've kind of hit my limit with the retro stuff. Wanted to get some more. They're kind of sold out. I just ran out of per capita. Yeah, there are only 8mm bolt action rifles you're finding now. You're not touching a K98 for under a grand. So yeah, I think I still got mine. Should take that out and shoot it, but when the prices go up on stuff, you know, I usually sell them, especially if I shot hundreds and hundreds of rounds out of it, like a K98. They're a great gun, but you know, I put a lot of rounds down range. I used to go through cases of ammo with a lot of these surplus guns. Now you can't do that anymore. I didn't weigh it, okay? And the reason I didn't compare it is because the lower is a PSA lower. It's not a retro lower, so that's a hybrid. But it's got to weigh less, okay? What it actually weighs, I don't know. Where am I based out of? From where? Where I live as a civilian or where I was in the military? Well, I don't know. Does it ever get that cold where you live? Okay. I remember when it got down that winter, we were down there in Charleston when it got down to 33 degrees. They said it was the coldest damn winter in 20 years or something when they were in 83 or wherever the hell it was. Uh, so they had that ice storm, shut the whole damn city down. But here, in the 20 years I've lived here, it'll drop 16 or something like this winter. This winter's been, usually it'll do it for a week or two and kind of get back up into the 30s. But this winter's been rough and a lot of wind, and it drops it down to the single digits. I mean, now I'm old and gray. I don't even leave the damn house, you know, anymore. Um, so that is cold up there. But see that I think that's that Arctic ship moving down from the north. It's hitting where you live, and they said the end of this week where I am is going to be really, really bad. Worse than that, it's going to be like in the single digits with the wind. So you just getting it first. North Carolina. I moved from New York State. New York State now is basically like going to a communist country or socialist country, and it has been for years. I moved down here in North Carolina. I was here 2017, 18. Yeah, it was cold. There was another cold one about 2008 or something. It was really, really cold. Damn wellhead froze. Yeah, out in the desert, it's funny. It'll snow during some kind of epic cycle. They say it snows out there every now and again, or when it rains and you have them wonderful flash floods. You know, yeah. Well, you don't know. It's weird because they said up in New York they're getting snow again up to 4 feet this year. Okay, and like my friends telling me, back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, we used to get pretty high snowfall there. And in the 80s, I remember I didn't even shovel my driveway. I had just a S10 pickup truck. I used to drive through the snow. I never shoveled it for a year or two after I got out. And then by the middle of the 90s, it started snowing where you go out and there's 3 foot of snow out there in the morning. You had to get a snow thrower or buy something. I didn't have one for years. Used to be able to shovel it, but that changed. And then it went back to where it was temperate, and it kind of snowed like, if you got a foot, 2 foot, that was a lot. So this year, I guess they're getting bombarded, and they had a damn 60-car pileup during an ice storm this week up on Tug Hill. It's a little north of Utica where I live. I mean, it was a mess. Tractor trailers, cars are oof. Yeah, that's what happened to us in Charleston, like I was talking about my friend. It got down to 33 degrees. And I was colder than when I was up in New York State and it was negative 27 because the damn humidity goes right through you. All right. And it's a very unpleasant feeling because where I live in the center part of New York, when it got cold, it's like what he's dealing out there with the heat in Arizona. It was cold, but when the sky was clear, there was zero humidity. Okay. So if you got out in the bright sunlight of the day and the snow reflected, it actually makes you warm. You can actually, if you dress right, you move around out there and do stuff. But that's true. Who knows what's going to happen 40, 50 years from now? Well, I was old enough that if Nam went on for 3 more years, I would have went to Nam. But you have to remember, people hated those friggin' guns. Okay, a lot of guys I talked to that were there wouldn't. One guy wouldn't carry one. He had an M14 till a colonel took it away from him. It was a political thing. You had to use it. When they took him out there, his platoon sergeant took him out, had a brand new gun, took it all apart, cleaned it, took it out of actually went to the supply area, got him a new rifle, and got everything set. And he said the first shot he took, it ripped the head of the case off. So he started flipping out. And they told him, well, the only other choice you got, you carry the M60. Now, this is a guy that's 5'4" tall and weighs like 130 friggin' pounds. The friggin' machine gun was bigger than him, but he said, fuck it, that carried it to the rest of the war. You know. So I kind of don't live with that kind of thought. If it was up to me, I'd carry the M14. That's the hell we had, or something else. But and what Vietnam era rock song would be your theme? Really don't have any favorite songs. I have to think about that. Yeah, it's just the way the whole world's going, Peter. You know. Where about on 40? By you, or was it further? Was it down? Was it more towards me in the east or in the west towards Nashville? 31. First year manufacturer. Sounds like. Yeah, them old guns were were good weapons. Well, Glocks, I never was fond of them. I've had some, I've shot them, I know how to use them. As a general purpose gun, what they are, like a Smith & Wesson Model 10 with fixed sights. That's basically what the hell the Glock replaced. Um, Now they had to change the system uh, in 650. You can buy used ones for about $3. Uh, Hell, I bought them Turkish guns. Okay, the hell was that one I got? The SAR or whatever. For what I paid for that thing, it, it's just as good as a Glock, if not better. You know, everybody gets into the hype and the name and everything, and the Turks build a damn clone that Stoger pistol. I take over a Glock any day. You know, I don't think I even paid 3 bills for it. It was two something. So I ain't a fan of them, and I ain't gonna run out and buy a brand new one. And Glocks made AR-15s. That is something I did not know. Glock AR-15. GR-11.5. I can't see a picture of it. Oh, there we go. Oh, you guys keep a stream, keep up on her. I didn't know Glock was making ARs. That's going to be interesting. Well, yeah, the problem was when you study what happened, it didn't chrome line the bars. Again, when I was in the service, if they tell you there's something new and better, generally they don't know what the hell they're doing in the military. Back then, now, whatever. And anything new was never good. You're risking your life using any goddamn new equipment they gave you. Okay, be it radars or whatever, ordnance, weapons. The problem was Stoner built that gun to run on IMR powder, which IMR powder and some of my ARs, the reloads I make are super great, fantastic, accurate as hell. But IMR could not produce the powder they wanted in the quantity they wanted, so they went with the ball powder from Oilen or Winchester, which is a whole different ball game. And the idiotic thing is, they kept testing the weapons in Aberdeen with ammunition with IMR powder, but the ammunition issued overseas in Vietnam had the ball powder. They actually had a congressional investigation over this crap. So, that question, what would be your favorite gun in Nam? First of all, I wouldn't want to be in Nam to begin with. And second of all, I would have, like my friend that I work with, would have chose anything else but that. Oh, right there when you come in and where you, oh man, that was bad. Are they still doing the road construction? I know that was years ago when I come through there, but that kind of didn't help. Yeah, that's a good choice, like you said. Yeah, there's all kinds of stuff. Okay, that went around. That gun was rushed in. That gun was fielded before it was actually accepted or tested to any degree. There was a big political thing about that. It was politics, and it was a mess. You're not going to be disappointed. You know, I've had a couple of them. They do the one thing about them. They work, and for that price, how can you beat it when you're asking me about six something for a Glock? And it ain't much different than a damn Glock. Mine shoots good. I love that. The last one I bought, I love that gun. That's the one I'd carry on me. If I had to have a full size 9. They're supposed to build a copy of the FAL, that T48 or whatever the hell. There was a rumor they were going to build them, uh, which I think were made by H&R. The M14s, we had a couple M14s on the ship that had H&R, Harrington and Richardson on the receivers. Some were Springfields, some were H&Rs. But yeah, they said they were going to build that. It was one of the SHOT Shows. I ain't seen it yet or heard about it yet. I don't know what it costs, but something tells me I'm going to have to go get a loan from the bank and get one when they come out, because they'll probably sell out in half a second. Well, ball powder burns different than the stick powder. That stick powder, when I reloaded it, in my ARs, was a super accurate load, a 55 grain bullet, and it worked fine. Ball powder burns hotter and faster. So you're just, that weapon works on a simple friggin' hole in the barrel. It comes back through the tube. So if you get a powder that's burning and the time pressure arc thing, whenever you've studied that, the amount of pressure that peaks along the timeline, well, that's off. And how the AR works, if you get a powder burning faster, it increases the pressure at a different point in time while the bullet travels down the barrel. It screws up the way the gun works. In other words, you were having a violent reaction in the bolt carrier, and when it jerked it, combined with the fact that the chambers weren't chrome lined, and you get a little grime or rust in there, that's why I'd rip the heads off the bolts. And like he did, they actually issued you these friggin' things with nothing to clean it. A 30 caliber cleaning rod, even if you went and got one from an M14 or an M1 Garand or an M1 carbine, wouldn't fit down the 22 caliber barrel. So yeah, them people were screwed when they got issued them stupid things. Yeah. Universal Industries, no. I have Brownells, and the waffle ones say H&R, so I don't know, on the bottom they say Harrington and Richardson, so I don't know who actually made them or where they come from. And other 20 rounders I got are Brownell retros. Yeah, because we made 6 million of them. We used to hand them out. I guess they were arguing back when I was going to try to get one out of the DCM. Uh, they gave thousands of them to the Mexican police that were in storage since World War II. All right, they moved down 40 down to Nashville. All right. Okay, how'd you get that up there? They deactivated it or something? Because you really can't have the GI issue guns. At one time they did or something here in the States. I can't remember, but I do remember they were out on the flight deck and they had the rifles out, a bunch of them for some reason. And I asked him if I could ask the gunner's mate chief if I could look at him. He said, yeah. I just was reading in the back of them. And we had some with that fiberglass. We had some wooden, and we had some with the fiberglass stock on it. And I think one of them H&Rs had a fiberglass stock on it or whatever. Blocked the semi-auto. Yeah, see, you guys, your laws were different. I don't know if some people told me way back when that they did sell them, but then the way our country is here, uh, I've never actually seen one blocked like that. I heard that maybe back in the late 60s or early 70s they were around, but I don't know. Yeah, brown fiberglass. I've seen the stocks. There's a surplus place you get spring. They made them for the Springfield 03A3. And actually, all the drill rifles we had when I was in ROTC, we had Springfield 03A3s all welded up. All of them had the fiberglass stocks on them. And I've seen some at the surplus store. I don't really know if you can find them for the M14 or something. They came about in Vietnam because of the humidity and shit in the jungle. And I guess they were putting them on. I guess they were handing out to the Vietnamese all the old World War II weapons, Garands and Springfields and everything. So I don't know. All right, the retro furniture on an AR-15, okay, something produced now, is nothing at all like what the hell was on a real gun, because that was some sort of fiberglass type of material on there. And that's why all these guys are trying to buy stock sets that come off of parts guns. Okay, the stuff that's on there, I mean, it looks the same, but it ain't the same. It's some sort of polymer or plastic, where the other stuff was some sort of woven fiberglass or something. I don't think they use the process anymore. Okay, because fiberglass is supposedly, like radioactive material. But if you want to dress it out with original stocks, there's some guys that did that. It is different. You know, I don't think it makes a difference. The gun still shoots the same whether the handguard's made out of fiberglass or plastic. It feels the same. It's a little bit more slippery than in the original ones. Back when they were just another surplus. Don't know. That's an automatic weapon. Okay. And I don't have any. I don't know what original M16s are worth or where you could find one. You'd have to go to somebody that specializes in that type of a weapon. Okay, so can't help you there. TRW, yeah. I don't know if Springfield made them because I think the ones I had an H&R. I only looked at two of them. They didn't like it when I touched their guns there. They got nervous. I don't know if I've seen a Winchester. I think the other one was Springfield Armory. I believe they were made there too but not that long because, like you said, TRW ended up making the uh, lion's share of them, I believe. Some of them I do, some of them I don't. I prefer having one on there, especially if I'm in a situation where I got to keep one in the chamber. That means I'm already alert and going on. Uh, I have not gotten into any shootouts where that would make a difference. I know a lot of people don't like having uh, manual safeties on them, and some of the guns I have don't have them, but I do prefer one. And there's a way you can't show it on YouTube. There's a way you can take that thing out and just put a pin in there if you want. If that's a issue, it can be dealt with. You'd have to, I don't know where you'd find instructions on how to do it, but there are several guys that have taken the manual safeties out. Well, the thing about them, it's like I went to a gun shop. The guy had a whole case. He just opened up a gun. All these old break action guns, the old suicide specials, they call them, from back around 1890s to about the 1930s. They don't hold value. And I remember one guy saying when you get them and they shoot loose and stretch like a 22, he goes, you'd shoot it. And when your cylinder's not aligned, you're scraping lead off the bullet. It'll come back and hit you in the face and that. So there are people that do collect them. I've had some old guns that were rim fires and that. I bought a bunch of them at the auction, about $100 a piece, and I went and sold them all, and people bought them immediately. I did have some. If you go through my channels and see, there will be some of these guns that you're talking about, but never really got into them. That's actually what mine was built from. They put a Norinco M14 parts kit on a Armscor National Match receiver. I got the gun dirt cheap, but the bolt started to compress and headspace was lost in the barrel and that. I just had it rebuilt. I sent it to somebody. I took that Norinco stock off, which was dog crap, put an M14 stock and sent it out. The guy yanked the barrel and everything, and the bolt and the op rod, and rebuilt the gun for me. It's got an M14 stock and that, and all the Norinco parts. I ended up selling like the barrel and that. I sold all that stuff. Somebody bought it all. Whatever happened to it, I don't know. Yep, collects there. There are people who do collect them. That's why they made those guns. Those guns are made for law enforcement. Same thing as a revolver. You know, that's how the cops were trained. You never fired a revolver really in single action. It was always double action. That's what they trained them on. Right, right. Those, and that's a reasonable price. The one I had, I bought for about $300, and it didn't quite work well. I had the magazine was uh, screwed with. I had to go replace the spring in. I never could get it to work right. My VZ50 works fine. I had that gun for years. I'm never going to sell that one, but yeah, and they're a good pistol. They're a good little concealed carry gun. You know, I mean, we're like I said, for the uses of it, 32 is better than no gun at all. Put it to that way. A lot of people tell you no, but something like that, or even a little pocket 22 auto is better than no pistol whatsoever. And like I tell you guys, I don't get into many running gun battles nowadays. Oh, how the Tias, that Turkish gun. I got two of them, and one I got when they first come out. I paid over three, and then the 9mm. I bought a Blem or something when they had a sale. I got that for $3, and I mean, both of them are just like the guns I was issued. They look just like the damn guns I was issued in the military, and both of them shoot fairly well. I've never had no trouble with them. You know, you're looking, even if you go with Rock Island, made out of PI, they're a minimum of 5 for one. And people have had issues at Little Baby Rock and 380. I was really tempted in getting one of them, but then I seen where they've had a lot of problems with that gun on some kind of video or some report with YouTube. So, yeah, go with them Turkish guns, man. You can. I got 2 of them. So what can I say? Damn legs are getting stiff. Glock AR. That's interesting. I'm going to have to look into that. Police trials. Oh, here's the thing. They don't know if this gun will ever be for sale in the United States. That's something to do some research. Well, at least you guys gave me something to research on. Glock build an AR. That is very interesting. So, yeah, but going to do some work with Bear Creek Arsenal here coming up. Going to see if I can get anything to work here. And when it comes to budget ARs, doing a build or even buying one of their complete rifles, they kind of beat everybody hands down, and it's a constant thing. They do have sales, and the things come in very very reasonably priced. The only question is, how do they shoot? You know. But I'm going to have a video where I run a scope down 4 different barrels, 2 of them unfired and 2 of them after I fired them, so you can see for yourself. I've shot one. I've seen some people had collector's items, and there's an old guy I knew that had an Interarms one. And what he did is he would store the guns with the slide lock back. Why he did that, I have no idea. But his autos, he had a couple of revolvers, and there was an incident with his ex-wife where the police took the guns away from him because of a domestic call. And so these firearms were held for a long time, years. And then when he got his guns back, or he moved from one state to another, he brought these things, and he was showing me all these guns. I think he had a Spanish 45 ACP. He had that Interarms HSC, and how else did he have? He had 2 Spanish pistols. One was a 45 ACP. They were really bad. I forget which company made them. It wasn't Star. It was one of the other Spanish makers, and they shot well. They looked like crap. But he had a 45, a 9. He had that HSC and something else, and all of them were locked back. I said, he goes, that's the way I stored them. I got and they didn't return the magazines. So all of them needed a new magazine and that. And I went through all the stuff, found the magazines, and went out, repaired them, test fired them. The strange thing about the HSC, now when you look at the gun, there's all these little tiny springs, like anything the Germans made, highly engineered. Well, he compressed all these springs over the years. He kept them compressed or something, and the gun wouldn't work worth a crap. And I think I replaced the main recoil spring in that, but the internal springs, they were compressed and stored that way for years. So the gun was doing all kinds of weird stuff malfunctioning. And I said, unless I completely disassemble this gun and replaced every little tiny spring in there, I said, it ain't never going to work right. So I don't know. I gave it back to him, and I don't know what happened to him. He passed away a few years later, but yeah, I've shot one. They're a nice gun. They're actually a very nice gun. Well, he didn't. I don't know if this is a felony or what happened. He got a lawyer. He got the guns back. Okay. But he didn't end up with a felony conviction. So had to sell him immediately due to his felony. For the whatever he did was the felony he was convicted of. Or whatever. Yeah, that's why I kind of don't cause trouble. Usually in the wee hours of the night, I'm asleep, not running through my neighborhood with a hatchet or something like some of these people get arrested for, some kind of crazy shit. Or now, I guess North Carolina, after that Washington gun lawyer said something, I like watching him. He explained that when they did this constitutional carry and they passed that law in the state, a lot of the things are the standard stuff on the forms you fill out when you buy a gun, addicted to marijuana or heroin or whatever the hell. But one of them is public drunkenness or something, or alcoholism. So, like he said, this law was written in a way that if you get a DWI, and how it works now, if you blow like over a 0.2 or something, then they automatically call you a chronic alcoholic. So I remember this one guy I knew, he was nervous. He actually got caught up tending bar. And back where I come from, they used to raid the bars every now and then, and they'd set you up. The police would come in undercover, when you're busier than hell on a Friday, Saturday night, and they'd order 2 beers, and then you'd serve it to them. You'd never seen these people, and one of the people was underage, which 21, and they'd burn you. And then what would happen in the wonderful system here is because they are so worried about enforcing the law. If you choked up $10,000 in cash, you got your liquor license reinstated within 48 hours. If you did not, they would shut your bar down for 90 days. So, but my buddy was tending bar, and he liked to drink a lot, and he wasn't driving or nothing, but they took him down and gave him a breathalyzer, and he got nervous that if he blew over a 0.2 or something, or is that or something, a fight or something, or drunken disorderly, but if you blow over that 0.2, they say you're chronic and they will court order you to go to rehab. I knew a guy that happened with a DWI. Not only get burned for the DWI, but his blood alcohol level was so high that they court ordered him to go to a rehab treatment. So if something like that happens to you in North Carolina, you lose that constitutional carry right and a clause in that law. And it's something the Washington gun lawyer brought up. My H&K, G91 and G93s. How's it going? Yeah, see, this state, they sell some kind of something that isn't THC, it's some other hemp derivative. but I don't think you can actually get medical marijuana. They have these dispensaries, and well, I don't use any of the products, so I don't know what the hell it is. But I don't think they give you a card. They just sell a lower end of it or something in this state or something like that. But there's dispensaries all over the friggin' place. All right, good. We got somebody. Like I said, I used to buy Glock barrels from them, do polymer 80 builds, and one of them the chamber was off. I had work on it and that and polish the feed ramp and that, but I got, it was a little bit of work. I got them working, and they were dirt cheap. They're way cheaper than any other place I can get them, so it wasn't real horrible, and I was able to repair them. But I've been happy with the products, even though they can be a little screwed up at times. Now why? I mean, yeah, I regret selling my H&Ks, but I got paid fairly well for them when I did sell them, and I needed the money. I wish I didn't. Now I just got that Century Arms hokey gun, but what are you gonna do? You know, that's just the way it goes. Yeah, I don't know what they do here. They sell it even in a wine store. You can get these little bottles of something, and they have it at the American Legion bar. It's a bottle of something. Yeah, I think it could be what you're describing here, Delta 8 or some weird crap. And there's people that come in there. Usually they're the old ones that got these chronic illnesses because they won't give them. The doctors won't give them painkillers no more. Okay. Uh, It used to be they used to like them old vets because the VA'd send them all kinds of stuff, Vicodin, whatever the hell, for their injuries. And some of these old guys, if you ask them, they give you one. So had a couple in there to do that, but now they get a Sprite, can of Sprite, a glass of ice, and put whatever this liquid stuff is in there. And then I guess there was some legal thing where you couldn't sell it no more, and then they got something else that's more watered down than that. That's it. I had the two rifles. I didn't really own anything else. A friend of mine had that one pistol. I forget what it was. I just seen one come up for sale that you could put a 22, 380, 32 barrel in it. A friend of mine had one of them. Another friend of mine had a P7, the squeeze cocker. Okay, and I fired one of them at a demonstration once. Those things are astronomical. My neighbor just bought one, and I don't know how many thou he paid for the gun, and it had two or three magazines with it. And he said the magazines go for $140 because I guess that was a giant innovation back in the 70s. And I had the chance to buy one of them things for $400. I just didn't have the money at the time. And that's the one I passed up on. And really, it's a weird gun. It took 13 pounds of pressure to pull the handle in, but it only took 3 or 4 to keep it cocked. You know, it was a very strange gun, but they were always high priced for me. That's why I didn't have a collection of them. And that's one. Because, yeah, you're never going to find those guns anymore. Yeah, I mean, that's what I said about that. I'm tempted because I'm looking. I guess they have changed the laws and they're bringing parts kits in with barrels. And there's a few guns out there. I wouldn't be, even an FN, but the cost. I could buy a DSA and have a warranty and go out and shoot a brand new FN for a little bit more of the money. I'd rather do that than, like you said, the flats and everything. And they wanted one for $550. I'm still getting. I think I paid a little over $1,000 for their gun. So depending how you got in the kit, which I know some of them ain't that expensive, you'd still kind of get away a little on the. Welded, do you mean by welded finished or welded back together? Thank you. Is that a re-weld or folded and welded and ready to roll to assemble? '80s made 94. Long barrel retractable. That's cheap. They usually go for 4 or 5,000, depending on what condition it is. HK94. Let me look. All right, 94s, I don't know. It must be a 93 I had in 223 then. I don't know what they go for. Let me look. Okay, pre-ban 1986, 3,827, 1,450 with a 16-inch barrel. There's another one, doesn't say what the barrel length is. 3,065. These are going, like I said, $2,000 to $4,000. So some of them. That sounds fair, depending on how beat up it is. Condition. Set me C. There's only a set me C and a set me L. Okay. And yes, they're different. Very different. Yeah, I know. That's welded finish flat. Okay, so that's the receiver. In other words, if you get that, you're ready to roll in your build, right? I know the blanks are only $100, but you need like $500 worth of jigs and stuff if they're still made. The ATF come down on people, and you can't really find the jigs and stuff no more. That's why they're selling the kits so cheap. Okay. That's where you got to go unless you're going to get really into it and start bending it. I mean, there's some people that show you how to build a jig. I don't know what your machining skills are. Some of that stuff, though, the heavier crap, my little lathe is, or my little milling machine is too light for that stuff. The lathe, I could probably turn all the stuff on, but I'd have to go back to work and get a hold of Bridgeport to construct it. See, that's tough. And with me and my hand's getting worse and worse every day. All of that stuff's, and I'm putting AR together is a pain in the ass. Sometimes I got to have my damn wife help me do it. And bells are all right, when they came out. All right, man, keep cool, Peter. Keep cool. Retro Bushmasters? No. I had a Bushmaster, and I built some stuff with Bushmaster parts when the company went bankrupt. But not a retro. Yeah, well, how much do they run? You getting used ones, or you find somebody to rent you one or something? I don't know. All right. Yep, it is getting close to me. Hour and a half. Get ready to do some other stuff. Oh hell, then making a jig should be easy. I mean, there's somebody out there that shows you the blueprints of making it, and if you got a decent milling machine, like I said, I think you can do all that on a Bridgeport. And do it. The only thing I heard is a lot of that when they fold it up and that the things crack or break, or some of the Century Arms things used to crack or break on the bends and stuff. I don't know. But 554 already welded up. Did you look around and see if anyone else had them done? Because you do find on a gun broker, you do find some weird stuff. But then again, why are they selling it? It's something they ain't quite right with it. That's the only problem. That's a tough one. Matter of fact, when the weather breaks, I got to pull out my 70C and my 70L and that other gun and put all that money into them. I should at least shoot the damn things every now and again. But they are an interesting gun. Yeah. They are interesting guns. Well, we're hitting that hour and a half mark. It's been another good discussion. A lot of stuff going on. A lot of questions, answers, and all the other fun stuff. Yes, that's why you got to keep them clean, or you end up with all kinds of problems. But we're probably going to wrap it up. I'll see you guys next Sunday. And as usual, I thank all of you for coming out and getting in a discussion, and keep it rolling right along. And it's always fun. So we'll see you again next Sunday. All right.